Patrick McNeil back here with you at the intermission, and the last few years we've been catching up with alumni of the other maritime teams because they're obviously an important part of the Eagles' history. And I always like to go to an interview where there's an Eagles tie-in, and we're joined now by someone who's alumni of both the PEI Rocket and the Bathurst Titan, Kris MacDonald. Some know him as Killer. We've talked to the broadcast that Kris has a connection with Jude Campbell. Kris, we'll start off with that. What's your connection with Jude?
Jude's my little cousin and is also my godson there. I've been tight with Jude my whole life.
Jude obviously is an Island boy, as you are as well. Your first year in the queue was the PEI Rockets' second season in the queue. Obviously, things were still kind of new back then. What was it like being on the Rocket in the early days, and how does the vibe then compare to what's going on now with the Islanders?
It was a dream come true to play Major Junior at home. The Rocket were very new in town. Like you said, it was the second season. But there was a lot of buzz. It was awesome. All my family and friends got to watch me play all the time. And not only that, but in the community, being a local guy, I took a lot of pride in being a role model for the kids. It was awesome. The Rocket, obviously now, are the Charlottetown Islanders. The Rocket went through a few years there where it was a bit rough, and then a new ownership group came in. They've done a great job. And then Jimmy there for the last, I don't know how many years he's been, 7 or so. The job he's done has really revived the organization for sure.
Do you get the sense you almost had it all in your junior career? Because when you were growing up, there wouldn't have been Major Junior in PEI. There would have been Summerside in Junior A as well as Charlottetown. You play with Summerside in Junior A, so you played for a team that you may have watched growing up. And then the Major Junior thing, you talk about it being a dream, but it's probably something that you wouldn't have even ever thought would have happened because, as I said, growing up, there was no team in PEI. How grateful were you to get to have both of those experiences?
It was talked about that they were trying to get it. Obviously, we had the Charlottetown Abbeys at the time and the Summerside Capitals, and they were the two big junior teams. My first game I ever went to in the Quebec League was actually in Cape Breton, and Marc-Andre Fleury was in nets. It was when I was in Bantam at a tournament over there. I kind of got the vibe, the atmosphere over there. It was awesome, and then to think about that coming to PEI was great. And then they came in. I got drafted the summer that they were moving to the island, so I went to the first training camp ever at the Rocket, and just even being a part of that was very cool.
You had a few scraps in the day as well. Jude's actually told the story multiple times how he was crying in the stands because he was seeing you fight. Do you have any memories of that in particular?
No, I did have quite a few fights. Obviously, the league has changed quite a bit than it was back then. It was part of my role, something I took a lot of pride in, standing up for my teammates and kind of creating that energy in the rink. Juder, he was young. I was talking to his mom about it. I think he watched some clips of me fighting and stuff like that. And obviously, as a kid, it upset him a little bit, but that stuff's not a part of the game in Major Junior as it was back then. But I always told my buddies, if you can't score, you got to get on the game sheet one way or another. And that was the way I got on the game sheet.
Is there anyone in particular you remember on Cape Breton fighting, either if you were with PEI or Bathurst? I don't know if you would have ever tussled with Brad Gallant or Neil Smith or any of those guys.
Brad's actually one of my good buddies.
All
the Gallant brothers. I'm good buddies with them. Me and Brad a couple times almost fought, but we didn't. Trying to think back to guys I would have fought. I definitely fought in the Cape. I remember that for sure, but I can't remember offhand who it was. But I know they had a couple heavyweights that I remember Jimmy Bonneau squaring off with, and they were some good fights.
You were with Bathurst in 2006 as well, and that was a strong team. It came one game away from the Memorial Cup just because of how the playoff tree worked with Moncton being in the final and whatnot. Part of that path, too, was the sweep against Cape Breton in the second round. What do you remember about that Bathurst playoff run? And although it was a sweep against Cape Breton, that was a close series in terms of the games played. Do you remember anything about that playoff run and that series in particular?
That year was real special. We had a real special team. And at the trade deadline, I think we brought in, 7 players probably. Sylvain was the GM at the time, Sly, and he did a great job bringing in the pieces we needed. We bet Charlottetown on the first round. I remember that. We swept Cape Breton, and I had the bragging rights over Brad Gallant with that one. And then ultimately it came down to that game 7 in Quebec. It was sold out. Just a crazy atmosphere. And coming that close and coming short obviously was disappointing, but I'll always remember that playoff run and that team we had. We had a lot of good players and just great guys. And it was tough to come up short because obviously the Memorial Cup experience would have been something else, being in Moncton too, because it was only a couple hours from Bathurst. And back then, I know Bathurst doesn't have the fans they used to, but the fans back then, it was awesome. Every game was sold out and they had tailgaters in the parking lot and everything else. It was a great spot to play junior.
Early days of the Titan were really something else. Now, following your days in the queue, you played university hockey, and I found it interesting looking up your early prospects because you played for both Acadia and UPEI. You don't see that a lot, guys switching schools. Talk a bit about your university career and what were the logistics of getting to play at home after having gone away to Acadia.
Obviously, Darren Burns, who I coach with now, he recruited me here. and it was the best choice I've ever made. I love the Valley, came here. I played 3 seasons here. I took courses when I was in junior, so I had a year done coming in. So I was able to graduate in 3 years. I got my kinesiology degree here. And then usually you would have to sit out a year to switch schools. But my little brother got involved in the car accident, and he's fine now. But at the time, it was a little scary. So I did a compassionate appeal, and Darren Burns supported me 100% and went through. So I was able to play for UPEI and 4B McPherson the year after.
Happy ending, I guess, in both respects. You talked about coming back to Acadia. I guess we could finish off with that because you're associate coach of a team that has some familiar faces to those of us in Cape Breton. Peyton Hoyt and your leading scorer this year, Liam Kidney, having quite the season. Just talk about what they've meant to the Axemen program this year.
It's awesome. I just finished my 8th season. Like I said, the Valley, PEI's home, but the Valley's my second home. So I was very excited to get the opportunity to come back here. And then obviously having the relationship with Darren coach me to come back and coach with him was great. As far as Kidder and Hoyter go, and those guys are 2 big pieces of our program. Hoyter's this year, especially in the second half, he kind of took off physically. He was finishing every hit. He was producing offensively. Just a great guy in the room. Guys love him. Kidder, he was a surprise. We didn't expect. It's a big transition, I find, going from junior to university, because you're going from playing guys that are 16 to 20 to guys that are 21 to anywhere to 26, 27. So Kidder came in. He had a huge impact. Once again, he's a great guy. All the guys love him. He's a character guy, and both of those guys are going to be big pieces for us moving forward. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about those guys.
Nice to see them having success at the university level. Good to chat, Kris. A lot of ground covered here. Best of luck going forward with Acadia, and thanks for taking the time to stop by.
All right. Thank you very much.
That is Kris MacDonald. He's actually the godfather to current Eagles forward Jude Campbell, and as he mentioned, an associate coach for the Acadia Axemen in the AUS. You're listening to the intermission of Cape Breton Credit Union Eagles Hockey, 1270 CJCB.